He was a prince, the king's second son, forever in the shadow of his dazzling elder brother. Shy, with a tormenting stammer, he never dreamed of the crown. She was a young aristocrat, the life of the party, valuing freedom above all else. It seemed their worlds were incompatible. She feared his destiny, he feared life without her. But the stubbornness of a prince in love, or an inexorable force of attraction, decreed otherwise. This is the story of how the future King George VI won the heart of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, the future Queen Mother, and of a choice that determined not only their happiness, but also the future of a nation. London, summer 1920. The post-war city craved celebration, and tonight it got it. In the gleaming halls of the Ritz Hotel, one of the season's most brilliant balls was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers showered the dancers in golden rain. The orchestra played a rousing foxtrot, and the air was intoxicatingly light with champagne and expensive perfumes. At the very heart of this glittering whirlwind was 19-year-old Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. The youngest daughter of a Scottish earl, recently conquering London society, she was like a rare flower, fresh, witty, with violet eyes and a smile that instantly charmed. Her hair, cut in the latest fashion, framed a lively, intelligent face. Surrounded by a flock of admiring cavaliers in a simple yet exquisite gown, she laughed coquettishly, savoring every moment. This ball, after the harsh war years when her ancestral home, Glamis Castle, had served as a hospital, seemed a true miracle to her. Standing somewhat apart was Prince Albert, Duke of York. Bertie, as his family called him, the king's second son, always felt uneasy in a crowded room. A serious gaze, natural shyness, exacerbated by a treacherous stammer. All this made social events more of a torture than a pleasure for him. But tonight, his gaze was fixed intently on her, on the girl in pale blue. In this kaleidoscope of light and music, she seemed an almost ethereal creature. Something in her laugh, in the barely perceptible tilt of her head, made his heart stand still. The music changed to a smoother waltz. Bertie took a deep breath. His hands grew slightly damp. "Come on, Albert," he mentally encouraged himself, recalling his father's lectures on duty and the necessity of being seen. Just one dance. He moved slowly across the hall, navigating between the dancing couples. Each step was an effort, as if he were walking against a current. "Lady Elizabeth!" His voice trembled, the treacherous stammer escaping, a flush spreading across his cheeks. She turned her head and looked at him. "Your Royal Highness," she curtsied politely, tilting her head slightly to one side. Would you allow me?" He made a small gesture towards the dancers. "A dance?" She smiled, but did not immediately place her hand in his. "I thought the Duke of York wasn't very fond of dancing." "But today," he felt himself at a loss, unable to utter another word. As if reading his thoughts, Elizabeth smiled gently and extended her hand. "Then let's," she said, her smile widening. His hand, cool and slightly damp when he touched her palm, felt foreign. As they glided across the parquet, Bertie was in seventh heaven. Clumsy, stiff with nerves, he barely heard the music. Only her perfume, the light touch of her hand on his shoulder, her unbearably close presence. That was all that mattered. He had prepared himself for agonizing silence or polite, meaningless phrases. But Elizabeth, her voice soft and encouraging, unexpectedly and easily started a conversation. "I hear you are a great admirer of tennis, Your Royal Highness, and they say you play excellently?" she remarked, her eyes looking directly and kindly at him. "Well, I try," he nodded, feeling the words stumble again. "Tennis isn't just physical strength, it's an incredible battle of characters, isn't it? The ability to take a hit, not to give up after a loss. It always seemed to me that this sport says a lot about a person. And what else fascinates you, besides sport?" He expected her to change the subject to something more social, but her interested gaze emboldened him. "The Navy," he replied, almost certain it would sound too serious and out of place at a ball. "I served in the Navy." Instead of a polite nod, Elizabeth tilted her head with interest. "You were at the Battle of Jutland, weren't you? That must have been frightening, but also incredibly important. What was it like?" Bertie froze. She was genuinely listening. And for the first time in many years, he felt like more than just the second prince, more than just the man who was always in his brother's shadow. He felt that someone was interested in who he was, himself. When the music stopped, he reluctantly let her go. Thank you, Lady Elizabeth. It was unforgettable." His voice sounded more confident than at the beginning. "It was a pleasant dance." Elizabeth smiled again, but now with a faint hint of something he couldn't quite grasp. Bertie remained standing in the middle of the hall. In that instant, he knew he had fallen in love, completely, irrevocably, and as it still seemed to him, utterly hopelessly. But now, a tiny, barely perceptible ray of hope mingled with that hopelessness. And Lady Elizabeth? She had no idea yet that this awkward dance with a stammering prince was merely the first note in a melody that would completely change her life. For now, as the music played and champagne flowed, young Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon simply enjoyed the ball, unaware that someone's gaze, full of timid adoration, was already intently watching her. What trials did that gaze portend for her? And what price would she have to pay for royal attention she hadn't yet sought? If you enjoy this story and want to hear more about forgotten destinies and royal intrigues, subscribe. There are many more fascinating stories ahead. The dance at the Ritz became an obsession for Prince Albert. The image of Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon haunted him day and night. He sought new encounters, however fleeting, at receptions and charity evenings, each time hoping to catch her eye, to exchange at least a few words. London society, always prone to gossip, had already begun to whisper about the Duke of York's attention to the charming daughter of the Earl of Strathmore. Elizabeth herself, though she noticed the prince's persistent attention, tried not to attach too much importance to it. She was young, life seemed a series of exciting adventures, and she had no shortage of admirers. Prince Albert was nice, undoubtedly, but the thought of any serious connection with a member of the royal family filled her more with an inner shudder than with a thrill. In the autumn of 1920, Bertie, taking advantage of a long-standing family acquaintance, received an invitation to stay at Glamis Castle, the Bowes-Lyons' ancestral home in Scotland. Elizabeth, upon learning of this, felt no particular delight. In her diary, where she confided her most secret thoughts, a short but eloquent entry appeared in those days. "Prince Albert is coming to stay with us on Saturday. Ghastly." It wasn't so much the prince's personality that frightened her, but everything he represented: court etiquette, endless duties, a life under constant public scrutiny, all of which contrasted so sharply with the free and relaxed atmosphere of her beloved Glamis. However, the days Bertie spent in Scotland proved to be a real gift for him. He was enchanted by the ancient castle, its legends, the beauty of the surrounding nature, but most importantly, he could see Elizabeth in her usual setting, laughing with her younger brothers, enthusiastically discussing something with her father, caringly helping her mother. Here, far from the London bustle, she seemed even more natural and attractive. Near her, in this warm family atmosphere, his stammer sometimes almost disappeared, and he felt surprisingly light and free. February 1921 arrived. Bertie was once again a guest of the Bowes-Lyons, this time at their English estate, St. Paul's Walden, Bury. The winter was mild, and after one of their shared luncheons, when the sun shone particularly gently through the bare branches of the trees, the two of them went for a walk in the garden. The prince's heart was pounding so hard, it felt as if it would leap out of his chest. He had prepared for this moment for so long, rehearsed his words. But now they had all flown out of his head. They walked silently down an alley strewn with last year's leaves. Elizabeth was cheerfully recounting her plans for spring, for an upcoming trip to Paris. Bertie barely listened, gathering his courage. Finally he stopped, and turning to her, blurted out, feeling his voice treacherously tremble and the hated stammer return. Lady Elizabeth, I must tell you, I love you, and I would like to ask for your hand." Elizabeth froze. She looked at him. His face was pale, his eyes filled with such desperate hope that her heart ached. "Your Royal Highness," she began, flustered, not knowing what to say. I am very, very touched by your kindness to me, but I cannot," she said softly but firmly. "Forgive me. I value your friendship, your good regard, but no." He said nothing, only nodded. His shoulders slumped slightly, and he turned away, not sharply, but like a man who no longer wanted to be looked at. He understood that he was not worthy of her. Could such an insecure, awkward, shy man, with that terrible habit of stammering at the most inopportune moments, expect anything else? He was not like his brother, who could probably have proposed to her in such a way that she wouldn't have even hesitated. But he was simply not the one. "It's all right," he forced himself to smile. Her eyes wavered, but Albert could not bear to see pity, so he turned and hurried away. He thought he had lost everything, though in reality, everything was just beginning. A year had passed since that memorable day at St. Paul's Waldenbury. A year Prince Albert had spent in quiet sorrow, nurturing a fragile hope, while Lady Elizabeth tried to drown out the echoes of that difficult conversation in a whirlwind of social life. Their rare encounters at official events were restrained, polite. The shadow of the first refusal lay invisibly between them. Bertie did not give up. He avoided being importunate, but sought every opportunity to be near, to let her know his feelings had not changed. His letters to her were full of warmth, news, observations, but not pleas of love. He dared not broach that subject directly again. Elizabeth read them with a mixed feeling of sadness and tenderness, appreciating his delicacy, but her decision remained unwavering. Fate, however, was preparing a new test for them. In February 1922, England was abuzz with anticipation for a royal wedding. Princess Mary, Bertie's sister, was marrying Viscount Lascelles, and Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon was invited to be one of the bridesmaids. This news brought her mixed feelings, flattery at the honor bestowed, and anxiety at the inevitable closeness to the royal family, and especially to Prince Albert. Wedding preparations consumed her. On the day of the ceremony, February 28th, in the majestic walls of Westminster Abbey, Elizabeth, in a silver bridesmaid's gown embroidered with pale pink roses, was dazzling. Her natural charm and freshness set her apart even among other beautiful noblewomen. Bertie, serving as one of the groomsmen, could not take his eyes off her. All year he had told himself he must resign himself. But now, seeing her so beautiful, so close, his love flared up with a new, unbearable intensity. It seemed to him that during the ceremony, when their eyes met, a special warmth flickered in hers. Or was it just his imagination? At the wedding reception in Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere of general jubilation loosened them up a bit. "You are especially beautiful today, Lady Elizabeth," Bertie dared to say when they managed a moment aside from the noisy crowd. His voice, as always in her presence, trembled slightly. "Thank you, Your Royal Highness," she smiled. "It is a very moving event for your family. Princess Mary looks so happy." "Yes, David, I mean my brother," he faltered, remembering his elder brother, the heir to the throne. "Always said Mary would find her happiness. I hope so." They fell silent. Elizabeth noticed how intently he was looking at her. "And you, Your Royal Highness, do you believe in happiness?" she asked softly, not knowing herself why she asked. Bertie looked her straight in the eye. "I believe it is possible," he answered seriously, "if one fights for it." A few days after the wedding, when the festive rush had subsided, Bertie, consumed by rekindled hope, invited Elizabeth for a walk. He had to try again. They walked along a park path, lightly dusted with March frost. "That wedding, it made me think a lot," Bertie began, his voice broken with emotion. "About the future, about what's truly important." Elizabeth remained silent, sensing where the conversation was heading. Elizabeth," He stopped, turning to her. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with a determined fire. "A year has passed. I haven't stopped thinking about you. Not for a single day. Then you said you couldn't. But maybe something has changed. Maybe you'll give me a chance. I beg you." There was so much desperation in his voice, so much unprotected love, that Elizabeth's heart ached. She saw before her not a prince, but simply a man, deeply and sincerely loving her. "Oh, Bertie," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. It was so painful to hurt him again. "You are one of my best, most faithful friends, and I am so terribly, so unbearably sorry." "But why?" It burst out of him, almost a choke. Is it me? Am I not good enough?" No, Bertie, what are you saying?" she interrupted fervently, placing a hand on his sleeve in a surge of sympathy. "It's not you at all. You are a wonderful man, kind, honest, devoted. Any woman would be happy." "Then why?" he repeated, looking at her with desperate entreaty. Elizabeth took a deep breath, averting her gaze. "Because you are a prince," she said softly but firmly. "And I don't want to live in a palace, Bertie. I can't live the way you do. My world is dear to me. My family, I want to be free. I don't want to always be looking over my shoulder, watching every word, every step. I don't want to become someone I am not." For a moment, Bertie felt a strange, almost painful relief. It wasn't him. Not his stammer, not his shyness, not his character. She hadn't rejected him as a person. But this relief was immediately replaced by an even deeper, almost chilling despair. If it had been him, he could have tried to change, to become better, more worthy of her. But how could he change who he was by birth? He couldn't stop being a prince, the king's son. His lineage, his destiny, which he had not chosen, that was what stood between him and his happiness. Would he never be able to be with the woman he dreamed of, just because he was born into the royal family? The thought was unbearable. "So, it's because of my title?" he said in a choked voice. "Because of who I am." "Because of who I would have to become by your side," Elizabeth corrected, her voice filled with genuine bitterness. "Understand, I don't condemn this life, but it's not for me." With these words, unable to bear his gaze, full of unspeakable suffering any longer, she turned sharply and almost ran away. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She felt unbearably sorry for him, and for herself. Bertie stood as if turned to stone. The second refusal. Now he knew the reason, and that reason seemed an insurmountable wall. He could fight anyone, anything, but how could he fight his own destiny? He looked up at the sky, gray and cold like his own heart. And for the first time in his life, Prince Albert, Duke of York, felt truly alone and powerless in the face of his royal fate. The old clock in the drawing room of Glamis Castle struck noon, but Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon paid it no mind. She sat by the window, her cheek resting on her hand, gazing at the sun-drenched garden. Around her was the usual hum, the laughter of her younger brothers from the next room, the clatter of dishes from the kitchen, animated voices downstairs discussing plans for the evening. The house lived its ordinary, measured life. But she did not. She was thinking of him, of Bertie. Ever since he had proposed to her for the second time, this oppressive feeling had not left her. She had made the right choice, hadn't she? Yes. Of course she had. She had never wanted to be part of the royal family, never dreamed of palaces and ceremonies, never wished for her life to be scripted down to the last minute by someone else's will. She knew, if she had said yes, everything would have changed irrevocably. She would have become a cog in a vast system, where her steps, her words, even her thoughts would not belong solely to her. So why now, when everything seemed decided, did she feel so desperately that something was missing? Life, meanwhile, went on. She traveled, shone at London balls, saw around her a whole host of men considered worthy by society. The charming Lord Glenconner with his impeccable manners, the brilliant and witty Duke of Richmond, Freddie Dalrymple Hamilton, Archie Clark Kerr, even Prince Paul of Yugoslavia. They all admired her, sought her attention, caught her every glance. She laughed, flirted, accepted compliments with her inherent grace. But none of them made her heart beat the way it had in those few moments beside him. She tried not to think about it. But sometimes, especially in the pre-dawn stillness of her room, when sleep would not come, she would remember his face, the way he had looked at her when she had uttered her merciless no, how the light had slowly faded from his eyes, how she had fled, and he had never once reproached her. And something in her chest would ache painfully. Sometimes she received letters from him. They were not love letters. No, Albert would never allow himself to touch that forbidden subject again. His lines were restrained, respectful, friendly, warm. He wrote that he had traveled to the north of the country, visited coal mines and factories, talked with workers, trying to understand how his people lived. He wrote that his father, the king, was again demanding more of him, preparing him for new duties, that in London this spring, the scent of lilac and new grass was particularly strong. She replied, also trying not to touch on anything too personal, anything that might give him false hope. But every time she opened an envelope bearing the royal crest, she felt a strange, inexplicable warmth. Why was he still writing, after everything? And why did she, who had so resolutely rejected him, always await his letters with such a flutter in her heart? "Lizzie, my dear," her mother, Lady Strathmore, said one day, as they were having afternoon tea together in the drawing room at Glamis. Elizabeth looked up from her embroidery. "You haven't been yourself lately, somewhat absent." "What do you mean, Mama?" She tried to feign nonchalance. Lady Strathmore looked at her attentively, with that all-seeing motherly love. "I know many consider you flighty and carefree, but I am your mother, and I see when something is troubling you. Your eyes, they are sad, Lizzie." Elizabeth lowered her gaze to her teacup. The pattern on the porcelain blurred before her eyes. Silence hung in the room, thick and heavy. Then she asked, almost in a whisper without raising her head, "Mama, how did you know Papa was the one you wanted to spend your whole life with?" Lady Strathmore pondered for a moment, her face softening with a rush of memories. "Oh, my dear, it's not a matter of intellect or calculation, my darling, it's a matter of the heart. When it's him, you just know, you feel it." "But if I think about a person all the time, but I'm still not sure, does that mean it's not love? Does that mean it's not him?" Elizabeth's voice trembled. Lady Strathmore gently covered her hand with her own. Her touch was warm and comforting. "It means only one thing, my girl," she said softly but firmly. "It means you are afraid to take a step, afraid to take a risk." It was that very word, afraid, that struck her hardest. Not don't want, not don't love, but precisely afraid. Was she truly afraid of royal life, or was she afraid of something else? Perhaps herself and the feelings she had so persistently tried to suppress? This simple motherly conversation made her look at everything from a completely different angle. And for the first time in a long while, she felt not fear, but only a sharp, almost unbearable desire to understand herself and him. The new year, 1923, began, and with it came news. Prince Albert intended to visit their English estate, St. Paul's Walden Bury. Elizabeth felt her heart skip a beat. She intuitively sensed this would be no mere friendly visit. January was cold and snowy. Bertie arrived mid-month. He looked a little tired, but his eyes, when he greeted her, held the same familiar warm smile. The days passed in the usual country visit activities. Bertie spent much time with her father, and Elizabeth observed him. A maturity had appeared in him, and it could not fail to impress her. One afternoon after luncheon, Bertie approached her. "Lady Elizabeth," his voice was calm, but there was an underlying tension. "Would you care to accompany me for a short walk?" Her heart beat faster. "With pleasure, Your Royal Highness," she replied. They left the house and headed towards the woods. Snow crunched underfoot. The frosty air nipped at their cheeks. An echoing silence surrounded them, broken only by their footsteps and the rare cry of a winter bird. Elizabeth felt the tension mounting. Finally, they reached a small clearing surrounded by ancient oaks, their branches adorned with snowy caps. Bertie stopped and turned to her. "Elizabeth," he began, his voice quiet but surprisingly steady. "I know I have twice put you in an awkward position with my requests, and I would not wish to do so again. If your answer is the same as before, I will accept it. Believe me. But if I do not ask now," he smiled faintly, sadly, just with the corners of his lips, "I will regret it for the rest of my life." Bertie stepped a little closer, cautiously, as if giving her a chance to retreat, to escape this conversation. But she did not move, and continued to look at him. "I know," he continued, his voice becoming lower, more intimate. "I know that my world frightens you, that you do not want to be part of its rules, its endless restrictions." He squinted slightly, his gaze slowly tracing her face as if trying to memorize every feature, every eyelash, every shadow on her skin. "I know you are afraid of losing yourself in it, losing the Elizabeth whom I fell in love with." She clenched her fingers tightly in her thin gloves. The air around them seemed to thicken, to become viscous. "Bertie," she whispered, but he gently shook his head, not letting her finish, as if afraid to hear what she was about to say. "But do you know what I fear?" His voice became very quiet, almost inaudible against the dead silence of the winter forest. "I fear that one day, having lived a life without you, I will look back and realize I chose the wrong destiny, that all the titles, all the duties, all of it meant nothing because you were not by my side. I do not need just a wife, Elizabeth." He took another tiny step, closing the distance between them. "I need you, specifically." He gently took her hand in his. His fingers were cold, but his grip was surprisingly firm, as if this were his last chance, his last hope. "And if you say no, I will never ask you again. That is my word." Elizabeth looked at their clasped hands, at his fingers so desperately gripping her palm. She had to answer, but she could not. Within her, a merciless battle raged anew. One voice, cold and rational, insisted, "You know you can't handle it. You know royal life is not for you. It's a cage, no matter how beautiful it looks. Don't deceive yourself, or him." Another voice, quiet, almost forgotten but so persistent, whispered, "You're afraid, but you love him. Aren't your feelings worth taking a risk for?" "Bertie, He slowly closed his eyes, his face momentarily contorted in a grimace of pain. He squeezed her hand even tighter, bracing himself for the inevitable, bracing himself for refusal, for the third, and now surely the very last, time. But she still could not utter either yes or no. The words stuck in her throat, finding no way out. I need to think, she finally breathed out, almost in a whisper. Her voice was hoarse and foreign. Albert froze. His eyes flew open, filled with disbelief. You are not saying no?" His voice was barely audible, full of amazement and a timid, impossible hope. I don't know, she whispered, looking somewhere past him at the snow-covered trees. "All right." His voice sounded weary, but it no longer held the hopelessness that had been there just a minute ago. Hope had appeared in it. Weak, trembling, but hope. He had not lost her, not yet. But he had not won her either. Days of agonizing suspense lay ahead, for both of them. Bertie tried to carry on as usual, participating in conversations, even attempting to joke, but his eyes constantly sought Elizabeth, trying to guess her thoughts. He interpreted her every glance, every word, sometimes in his favor, sometimes against. And Elizabeth... These days became a time of profound internal transformation for her. She hardly slept, spending hours pacing her room or wandering through the snowy park, trying to understand herself. She weighed all the pros and cons again and again. I have always valued my freedom so much, my ability to be just Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. But what is freedom? if there is no one beside you with whom you want to share its every moment. He said this was the last time. The last. If I say no now, he will not return. He will keep his word, I know. And then, what then? What if true strength lies not in avoiding difficulties, but in facing them together with someone who loves you? With someone who believes in you more than you believe in yourself? Finally, after almost 2 weeks of agonizing deliberation, late on the evening of January 14th, she made her decision. She found Bertie in the library, where he sat alone by the fireplace, lost in thought. She approached him, her heart pounding so loudly it seemed audible throughout the house. "Bertie," she began softly but firmly, "I have been thinking a great deal." He froze, not daring to breathe. "And I am ready," she paused, gathering her strength. "I'm ready to take the risk. If your proposal still stands—" He slowly rose, his eyes wide with disbelieving amazement. "Elizabeth, you mean to say—" "Yes, Bertie," she said, a faint but happy smile appearing on her lips. "Yes, I will marry you, but I have one condition." "Anything!" he gasped, his voice trembling with overwhelming emotion. "Promise me that I will always be able to be myself, that you will never make me be someone I am not." "I promise!" he exclaimed fervently, taking a step towards her and gently, almost reverently, taking her hands in his. "I swear to you, Elizabeth, you will always be yourself, and I will be the happiest man on earth. Oh, my dear, you have no idea." Words stuck in his throat, but his eyes, shining with tears and happiness, spoke more than any words could. April 1923 washed London in long-awaited spring sunshine and the roar of ecstatic crowds. Westminster Abbey, a witness to centuries of English history, was preparing for another royal celebration. Today, Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon was to become the wife of Prince Albert, Duke of York. In her room at her Bruton Street home, Elizabeth stood before a tall mirror. The satin and pearls of her wedding gown, created by Madame Handley Seymour, flowed softly, reflecting the light. A veil of Brussels lace, a gift from her future mother-in-law, Queen Mary, enveloped her figure in a weightless cloud. She was beautiful. But in the depths of her violet eyes, alongside a soft radiance, a shadow still lingered. A shadow of doubt, a shadow of fear. There it was, that door, slammed shut, forever. The door to her former life, so understandable and free. Frightening? Yes, still frightening. Her heart ached at the thought of the colossal responsibility, the public scrutiny that would henceforth be her constant companion. She remembered her desperate resistance, her refusals. But then another image rose before her mind's eye. Bertie's face on that January day in the woods in the library. His eyes, full of such all-consuming joy when she had finally said yes. His voice, trembling with happiness, when he had given her his promise. You will always be yourself. And she knew she loved him. Loved this shy, somewhat awkward, but so incredibly devoted and strong-spirited man. And he loved her. Truly. This knowledge gave her strength. Thus began one of the most enduring and touching royal love stories of the 20th century. The path to this happiness was not easy, paved with doubts and 3 proposals of marriage. But love, patient and devoted, found its answer. Elizabeth did not know then that she was destined to become queen consort, the nation's support in terrible years of war, the mother of a future great queen. She knew only one thing: she had chosen love. And this choice forever changed not only her life, but also the destiny of the monarchy she was to serve with such devotion and dignity. If you enjoy experiencing history through storytelling, make sure to subscribe. Many more fascinating tales await. This story is inspired by real events but includes elements of artistic fiction. Up next, you will see a list of historical facts that formed its foundation.